Over 2 years ago, in the wake of one of the most bizarre UAP events in modern history, CJ and I sat down with pico balloon expert Tom Medlin to break down the mystery of the 3 unidentified objects shot down by the U.S. military over Super Bowl weekend. That conversation, recorded on February 22nd, 2023, has never been heard in full until now. For the first time, we're releasing the complete, remastered interview along with our post-interview analysis to explore what really happened in the skies over Alaska. Was it a UFO, or was it a simple tracking balloon mistaken for something else? Could a global UAP frenzy have led to an unprecedented military response? Tom Medlin shares his insider knowledge on amateur radio and high-altitude balloons to help us separate fact from speculation. Join us as we revisit this forgotten interview and uncover what may be the truth behind one of the most controversial shootdowns in modern UFO history. This is the Alaska UFO military encounter, an analysis of the balloon theory, the full remastered interview.
All Things Unexplained is free to watch on YouTube and listen to wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to support our show, you can visit our YouTube store. Additionally, you can find us on Venmo under All Things Unexplained. Be sure to check out our website, allthingsunexplained.com. All proceeds from the sales of Dr. Mounce's books on Amazon and Audible also go straight to our show.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic threw their plans against us.
All of a sudden, a stick out of nowhere landed right in front of us, and there was no tree, nothing overhead. Something threw it at us.
Yeah.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
I just love that intro. It's just so classic. All right. Hello, everyone, all of our unexplained ones out there. I'm CJ Derringer, joined with my co-host tonight, Dr. Tim Mounce. And we also have a very special guest this evening, or it might be daytime when you're listening. You can't see him, but you will be able to hear him. We have Tom Medlin joining us on the show tonight. Tom Medlin is our guest. And while the rest of you were watching the Super Bowl a few weekends ago, we were having a Super Bowl of our own in terms of unidentified aerial phenomena. So while you were cheering on Patrick Mahomes, the next day everybody was reaching out to Tom Medlin, trying to get his insight into what is going on in the world of ufology, as we call it here. So he is the host of a podcast called Amateur Radio Roundtable, which we had the pleasure of joining last night. It was lovely. Everybody check it out. It's a great group of people, and they do a live video feed every Tuesday night on w5kub.com, and that's at 8 p.m. Central Time. And let me tell you, it's worth tuning in just to see all of the gadgets that Tom and all of his co-hosts have sitting behind them as well. They are ham radio, I think they say amateurs, but I'm pretty sure they're experts, and really, really good stuff over there. So thanks again for having us. And thank you, Tom, for joining us on our show this evening. So welcome, Tom.
Wow, it sounds like you have a lot of people there. Thank you. Thank you for having us on the show.
Tom's joining us by phone, by the way.
Yes, joining us by
I'm on a phone. You know, we had a video. We were on video last night with you guys, and I think that the reason we are not able to do video tonight, you guys have us blocked somehow because you found out I have a face for radio. For TV, I have a face for radio. So yeah. Well, so anyway, hey, thank you so much for having us on here. Man, I could talk to you guys for like 3 days on this subject and still not cover it all. So it's going to be jam-packed tonight. I'll try to answer your questions. Let me tell you a little about me real quick.
Yes, please do.
I'm retired. I'm a electronics engineer, and let's see, a senior member of the Institute for Electrical and Electronic Engineers. Been a ham, extra class ham now for about 59 years. And I've always been in the business of trying to design and build equipment and new things. And I got into the pico balloon hobby here 4 or 5 years ago. And it's been really exciting. And we've made some great improvements to how it was back then to how it is today.
Wonderful. Well, and the ballooning is how we got in touch with you. And tell us, where are you located, Tom?
I am in Collierville, Tennessee. That's just outside of Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes. Okay. So not terribly far away from us in terms of, this side of the country. And you said you just had a storm blow through there, which is why I feel like we had gorgeous weather here today, which you wouldn't be able to tell because I'm wearing a turtleneck. I don't know why. It was very hot and it's going to be hot tomorrow. But most of the country is like under snow warnings and blizzard warnings, right? I mean, people are getting pounded with with snow today, which is crazy. But we are certainly glad that you are here to join us. And we have so many things we want to cover. We definitely want to go into your podcast a little bit more. And then we've got some technical questions about these balloons that you have been building, as well as some listener questions and comments. So those of you that are joining us, if you have questions, please do type them in. We might not get to them right away, but we do have a section dedicated at the end of the show where we want to dive into some of your questions, because you probably have lots of things that we haven't even thought of before. And just a little teaser for what Tom is going to get into. We've done lots of podcasts in the past few weeks about these balloons that have been shot down by F-22s. It started with the Chinese spy balloon, as we've been calling it. And then after that, there were 3 more that were shot down. And it came out that one of the balloons was actually potentially belonging to a Northern Illinois hobbyist club. They call themselves the Bottle Cap Balloon Brigade, if I'm not mistaken. And Tom, you built something that was part in that balloon, correct? That was eventually shot down.
After talking with them more, I realized they did not fly one of the little tractors that we make. They actually had a different one that they built up. But we know the people. We've worked with them and tried to help them get on their feet. It's a little difficult when you try to send a balloon around the world. The first balloon usually doesn't make it, and the second usually doesn't make it, and you got to keep fine-tuning things, and you'll eventually make it. 3 years ago, you had to try 10 times before you get one around the world. Now, we can just about guarantee it will go around the world the first time. I mean, we've got it so fine-tuned. In fact, I've got several balloons up right now. One we're very proud of. It's been up 252 days. It's flying at about 50,000 feet, and it's circled the world about 12 or 13 times now.
It's incredible. Tim, your audio is not coming through. If you said something there, I did not hear it.
Yeah, I just said wow offline.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
That was amazing.
Yes, that is amazing. So Tom's he's been doing his podcast for 10 years, and we'll chat with you about that. But you are having a little bit of your 15 minutes of fame because lots of people have been trying to contact you recently to get your insight on these balloons. In fact, you mentioned last night on your show that CNN had reached out to you and BBC and several others. And so we are honored to have you here with us tonight on All Things Unexplained. Thank you for giving us your time and joining us here this evening. So we'll just dive right into it. So tell us a little bit more about your podcast, your live show that you do every week.
Well, it's mainly about ham radio or shortwave listening and electronics. We started off 6 years ago, or maybe more, just as a shortwave listener. And a lot of people are shortwave listeners today, where you can take a little simple radio and you can listen to Radio Moscow or Havana, Cuba, or anywhere in the world. And that was really interesting, and I think that's what got us involved in ham radio. We got a license, and it's been a great hobby ever since. I've been active the entire 59 years. Back in the olden days, we used to build all of our equipment. Nowadays, you just buy it, you know. There's been a lot of improvements over 60 years.
So very briefly, for those of us, me, that have no idea what ham radio is, because I know Tim is very obsessed. What is ham radio?
Well, ham radio is actually, it's a hobby, but we're also experimenters, and we're licensed by the Federal Communications Commission. A lot of people confuse ham radio with CB radio. Ham radio is kind of like CB radio on steroids. On CB radio, you're limited to 5 watts. You're really not supposed to talk more than, 12 miles or something like that, if it will go that far. Ham radio, we can run upwards to 2,000 watts. We're licensed. We've got a tremendous amount of bandwidth of different ham radio bands that we can operate on. We can talk around the world. We can pick the band that's working for that part of the world at any given part of the day. Ham radio operators can operate TV. We can send TV pictures back and forth to each other. We have a lot of digital modes. We have sideband. We have AM. We've got Morse code. Now, Morse code is not a requirement anymore for ham radio to get your license, but a lot of us still do it. So, I operate what we call CW or Morse code. Just flying these balloons, we actually build this little micro transmitter. It's about the size of a postage stamp. We put it on this little balloon. This balloon is 32 inches in diameter, very small. And with some calculations and a certain amount of gas measured to the 10th of a gram, and knowing the volume of the balloon and the weight of everything, we can actually place that balloon at a specific altitude, and it will fly there. It will float at that altitude. So if we set it at 49,000 feet, it will fly at 49,000 feet around the world. This is not a weather balloon, and a weather balloon will not work. Weather balloons are latex. They're made to go up high and stretch and pop and come down within a couple hours. We go for the long haul, 252 days, and I hope we have 250 days more.
That's phenomenal. Are you collecting data with these balloons?
Well, the main thing that our balloons send back, and we have public. And let me just give out my website, because if you go to my website to w5kub.com, and if you'll click on balloon in the top menu, you will see a lot of our balloons on that page. You will also see maps of where these balloons are right now, and you can actually see them travel. And you can see some videos of us launching the balloons, building the balloons, gassing them up, and so forth. So there's a lot of information on that website, w5kub.com. Click on balloon, and you'll see more about pico balloons. As I mentioned, we're licensed by the Federal Communications Commission. We have been working with NOAA. You asked what type data we get. Typically, for just our hobby, we just like to track them. We get things like latitude, longitude that plots on a Google map. We get things like the voltage of the solar panels. We get the altitude. We can get the speed. And we can even see a prediction on there where these balloons are probably going to go over the next 80 hours. So that's typically what we do. Now, NOAA is, you probably have seen their hurricane models on TV. You know, when a hurricane is coming up the coast and you turn the news on, you see all the little dotted lines. There are several different ones. Those are different models. You know, some of them stay together, some of them kind of veer off. Yeah. We get the same model. We get the same model from NOAA for our balloon flights. So
Oh,
we can tell
really?
where these balloons are going to go. Yeah, we can tell where they're going to go. And so that's a pretty neat thing. And NOAA is also collecting this data, what little bit of data we have now, and we can improve the data and probably add a few more things. But NOAA is collecting this data and using it to improve their prediction models. So NOAA is involved with us to some degree, and so I feel like we're helping people. So it's scientific, it's a hobby, it's a great thing for like STEM, your science, technology, and electronics, math, your STEM programs in school,
Yes.
where kids build this, they watch it, and you just think about it. I mean, I have flown over countries where I didn't even remember studying or where they were, and you really learn geography, as it goes over countries. You learn, you watch it on the maps. Oh, I'm over the city in this country, and so forth as it travels. So, you learn a lot about the jet streams. If we get up in the right jet stream, we can fly 150 miles an hour. Or typically some of the slower speeds might be 10 miles an hour. But you can see the weather, jet streams. You look at, and there are websites out there that help us to see the weather at different altitudes. It shows us where the jet streams are and so forth, and we match that up to where we are. And it brings science together. It brings weather together. It brings geography in. It brings electronic skills in. It just brings a whole lot of things in.
Yeah. Well, that was a sales pitch enough for me to go figure out how to send a balloon up and do it with my kids. That's a great idea. Now, do you guys reach out to NOAA?
Yeah.
Do you reach out to
Do we
NOAA
what?
and connect with them, or do they how does NOAA get connected with your specific balloons?
Well, they have known about us. I'm not sure how they found out about us, but
Oh, okay.
there are more people than just me, in the hobby, and a lot of there's other people that have actually had contact with them, and there's been this arrangement or this helping hand, to each other. So. Yeah, we're helping them, and again, the tracking our balloons is on public websites. And if you look at my page, you'll see the public websites there where you can see where these balloons. And there may be at any given time 50 or 60 of these ham radio pico balloons floating around the world, and that doesn't even take into account weather balloons. There are 900 locations that launch 2 times a day. Weather balloons. So there's 1,800 weather balloons put in the air every day.
Whoa.
And now I'm talking a lot of balloons up in the air. 1,800 weather balloons a day by the National Weather Service. We probably have 50 or 60 balloons up, And then, hey, think of this. Think of birthdays. 365 million people in the U.S.
Yes.
Everybody has a birthday. You divide that by 365 days. And there's 1 million birthdays per day.
Wow.
And I can tell you, if 10% of those are kids, they're going to let a balloon go. So 1%.
I saw it happen just the other weekend.
Yeah, 1% of 1 million is 100,000. No, 10%. 10% of 1 million is 100,000 balloons. So there's a lot of balloons up there now. The Chinese balloon, that was bad. It needed to come down. They were spying. But there's so many other balloons up there that have been flying for 40 years, 50 years, over a 50-year period. And they're heading, I don't think there's been one accident caused by a balloon. It's a big place up there. And we fly. We're flying under FAA 101 exemption, meaning that the FAA has given permission for people, if you meet this criteria on your balloon, you're allowed to fly it without even contacting them. And, there's a few little things you have to do. Our payloads have to be less than 6 pounds to qualify. and our trackers weigh about 77 grams. That's
Oh,
less
wow.
than the weight of a quarter, maybe a quarter. And in the line, the string that holds the little tracker, it has to break within 50 pounds. So, those are real simple things. Don't launch it at the end of a runway. There's things like that. So the federal government, the FAA, has and is regulating these things. Now, Congress, they're jumping through hoops there. They think they can fix this thing, and I don't think they're looking through it right now, right? And they're threatening to put all kinds of transponders and stuff on every balloon, but it can't be done. The transponder that they want to put on every balloon costs about $2,000. Plus, it's heavy. Our balloons wouldn't even lift it. So I'm not sure if Congress is going to be able to pass that or not. They need to just step back and talk to the FAA and say, FAA, do you have this under control? Have you done tests? Do you agree you got the right policy? And if so, I think Congress should not try to change or make their own laws regulating these balloons. And I tell you, a kid loses a balloon, they're not going to put a $2,000 transponder on it. And guess what? If they pass a law here in the U.S., that doesn't affect other countries. And these ham balloons are being launched in every other country. So, and they come around across the United States. So,
That's fascinating, Tom. I tell you what, as a former CBer, I really have an appreciation for ham radio and a desire to pass the ham test. And they used to tell me that ham radio was the original internet. Back when the internet came out, the whole thing was, wow, you can communicate with anybody instantaneously on the other side of the world. And it was such a novel thing, right? Like, this had never been done before, but wait, it had been done before with ham radio.
Yeah. I've seen them say it was the first social network, before everything else came out.
Yes, exactly. And also, as an avid doomsday prepper, I have to admit that I'm fascinated by the potential for ham radio to come into service for the population should some sort of cataclysmic or emergency situation arise.
Yeah. I mentioned some of the different modes that we can run, like ham TV, sideband, Morse code, digital. I failed to mention a couple others. We can do things like EME, which is Earth, Moon, Earth. We can bounce the signal off the moon and talk to people through that way. We can talk through satellites. We have a number of ham radio satellites that's circling the Earth right now. And even we have radio gear on the International Space Station where many of the astronauts very quickly get their technician license so they can operate that radio. And we talk to the astronauts in the space station when they go over. A good friend of mine is Colonel Doug Wheelock. He's an astronaut. He has a high-ranking position in NASA now. A couple of years ago, he was the commander of the space station, and I talked to him 30 times 1 month as they went over, and I even talked to him 3 times driving home in my truck. I was actually able to talk to the space station from my truck. When they make a pass over, that's only up there for about 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes, but it's still, there's so many different aspects of ham radio.
That's incredible. Just mind-boggling. I had no idea that you could communicate with the space station. Just amazing. Tom, we have a listener question for you from listener George Winters, a.k.a. Alabama George. He's a top fan of the show. You were talking about weather balloons, and he wants to know, I think this is a great question. Considering we have so much advanced radar now, Doppler 9000, etc., he wants to know, why does NOAA still use weather balloons? What data do they gather from those?
Well, I'm not a meteorologist, so I'm not sure I can give you a scientific answer to that. I do think there are things that the weather balloons can probably pick up and record that maybe radar won't be able to pick up. It's a big sky up there, and the radar today I think the reason our balloons hadn't been seen in the past, particularly, is because the radar was kind of closed, kind of narrow. And after they saw the big balloon, they said, "Let's see what else is up there." And they opened the aperture up on the radar, and then they started seeing everything like a bird, which is too much to look at. Let me talk a little about the weather part of this. We just had a ham friend take a couple of our balloons down, and he went to Antarctica. He got a grant, a scientific grant, to go down to Antarctica to the German Niemeyer station in Antarctica, and he launched about 11 pico balloons from Antarctica. And the study basically was to see how or what type data we might could get from these little pico balloons that, maybe cost, $40, $50 and stay up for days and days and days at a time. How would that compare with launching a big, expensive balloon with helium and, expensive equipment hanging below it and so forth? So a study is going on right now to see what we can do to help maybe reduce some of those weather balloons. I can't tell you all the differences it might seem, but I'm sure there are many differences that sensors in a balloon might could pick up that maybe the weather radar would not.
That's right. And George, it's my understanding that NOAA uses the weather balloons also to help them in forecasting future weather. So the ability to detect certain things that can allow them to make patterns and do the 7-day forecast, for example.
Now that I know how many weather balloons go up every day, it makes more sense that every time there's some sort of UFO, people are like, it's a weather balloon. Well, sounds like there's a lot of them out there. So maybe it is.
There's a lot
Well,
out
you had
there.
mentioned you've mentioned a few really important key details that I want to circle back around to. We have been, again, tracking this balloon situation for a couple of weeks now. And since Tim is so passionate about it, and trust me, I fear even doing this right now, but I'm going to have him give us just a brief, and Tim, I mean brief synopsis. People can tune into our other podcasts to get the whole dish, but a brief synopsis of what has been going on with the balloons so we can circle back to Tom's details about the size of the ones that he launches, the weight, the FAA regulations, etc.
Well, sure, just really brief. And of course, we feel like our listeners kind of know about this already, but we had the spy balloon, right? Went over Alaska, Canada, across the continental United States. They say crossed a lot of sensitive military sites. We finally shot it down off the coast of the Carolinas, right? Then over Super Bowl weekend, and by the way, now we're all in arms in an uproar over balloons, and UFOs. And then Super Bowl weekend, right? The most unprecedented, once in a lifetime situation starts happening. We start getting notices that our military is shooting down UFOs. Mind-blowing. Not since 1947. Roswell, New Mexico has headlines like that come out. And literally then in 1947, the headlines were flying saucer shot down. Next day, headlines were, whoops, it was a balloon. So it's really funny how history has repeated itself now, all these years, decades later, 2023. And it started with a UFO over Alaska being shot down over Dead Horse or near Dead Horse, Alaska. And apparently out, landed onto some frozen ocean. And I can't wait to circle back with Tom later on that because he said so many key details there, which, as far as I know, has not been in the public knowledge with this situation. Okay, the official search for that UFO that was taken down over Alaska, abandoned. Can't find any of the debris. The weather's and the terrain's too difficult. Search is abandoned. Next, we had a UFO taken down over, I believe Canada was next. Okay, there have been no details about that. And by the way, I believe they said that the Alaska balloon was, let's see here, that it was car-sized. Originally is what they said, and I'll circle back with this with Tom later. And and then over Canada, shot down. No further information on it. And then we shot down one over Lake Huron. It was described as smaller than the spy balloon. How could it not be? Because that thing was big as 3 school buses. It was octagon-shaped with strings hanging off of it. So that search has been abandoned as well for the UFO shot down over Lake Huron. And I basically feel like the news about the Northern Illinois bottle cap balloon brigade's balloon disappearing over Alaska, that story came out, and the Pentagon has shut it down. No other information, almost as if they want us to believe that, yes, indeed, these were all hobby balloons that were taken out by missile.
So let's dive into that, because our F-22s shot down things with very expensive missiles, and we were left to believe that nobody knew at the end of the day what it was. So Tom, dive in a little bit here to this one that was shot down over Alaska, and how it connects to this North Illinois bottle cap balloon brigade.
All right. I think the car size is a little bit stretching it here. Our balloons are about 32 inches in diameter, very small cylinders, or spheres, actually. There are some pico balloons out there that are more spherical shaped. They may be 8 feet long and maybe a couple feet in diameter, look more like a cigar, but not many of those are flying. But, the military or spokesman says they can't find it. The one I'm referring to the Yukon, They say, we're not going to claim it was a party balloon or a hobby balloon until we find it. Well, they're never going to find it, and I can tell you why. And if we were on video night, I was going to show you one of the balloons here. It is made, the material is so thin, we have to be very careful handling it, or it'll get a hole in it. It's 1 mil thick. That's 1/1000th of an inch thick. And the little tractor that we built, and the one flying was a little bit larger, but the tractor we built, again, is postage stamp size. Now, when that rocket exploded up there, it probably vaporized that little balloon. I mean, there's no pieces of that balloon's going to be found. And probably, even if the tractor didn't break apart, you're never going to find a little 1-inch square thing down on the ground somewhere, out in the middle of the water or the snow or something, And so why do we think that it's there? Well, as I said on the show last night, I'm 98% sure it was this ham radio balloon. And, maybe 2% it could have been an alien, I don't know. But I think it was a ham balloon. And the reason was we were tracking it. And the last track we got, it was on the west coast of Alaska. And it got dark. And see, our pico balloons don't transmit during the dark because they're solar power only.
Oh.
But they continue on. And when the sun comes up the next day, it starts plotting again, so we can see, where it is. And the NOAA prediction for that flight put it across Alaska and right exactly in the Yukon, right here between the two little cities where the military says they shot down, this unidentified object. And we never heard from it again. So, now it's not unusual for a balloon to just go down by itself or for some reason stop talking, but it's very, very much of a coincidence that it was right in the same area when the missile went off and we hadn't heard from it anymore,
Right. Do you happen to know how long that balloon had been in the air?
I think the balloon had been up about 60-something days.
Okay.
I think it had been around the world about 6 times. So, I really feel sorry for the kids up there that launched the thing. I mean, this could have got many more revolutions around the Earth, and it was shot down on the 6th trip. It was doing so good.
I know,
but
what a
great story.
I know.
Yeah.
And, we're talking to Tom Medlin, host of the amateur radio podcast. Amateur Radio Roundtable podcast. You can check that out at w5kub.com. New episodes every Tuesday. And wow, I'm just not sure what that says. And I'm not sure that inspires much confidence in our intelligence community, right? That we can literally log on to Tom's website and see where all their balloons are. And here we have our Pentagon and our military potentially blasting down a balloon over Alaska, over our airspace. And by the way, here's what I took away from Tom's analysis of the percent odds that it was the balloon versus alien. And my takeaway is, so he's saying there's a chance that it was aliens. I'll take those odds. But Tom, I've only seen scarce pictures, and it's too bad we couldn't get you on video tonight because you had some pictures and things for us. But we weren't really sure what these balloons exactly looked like. We kind of had to guess. But can I ask you, what color and shape are the pico balloons generally?
Yeah, the one I was going to show you tonight, which we're starting to fly more and more, it's actually clear. It's very clear. You almost can't see it. So now the one that they also make one that's aluminum color or silver color, the 32-inch that's silver. That's what was flying on the one over the Yukon that came down that we're missing. Now, that silver probably gives a much better radar target than our clear ones. I think our clear balloons are pretty stealth, and probably radar is just not going to pick those up. And the tracker's so small. Again, I mean, it's smaller than a hummingbird. I mean, it's small. You know, I was in the Air Force, but it's been a long time since I was in, so they don't listen to me anymore. But I was a little surprised when they said we shot this thing down, but we don't know what it was. That was just a real surprise to me. Usually, you don't shoot things down if you don't know what they were. You know.
No, that's right. I've wondered the exact same thing, and so that one was silver. We've seen the clear ones. Tom, do you ever use any sort of odd shapes like octagons?
No, octagon. No, I don't know of any pico balloons that have used an octagon balloon. But then again, you know, that could very possibly been a Mylar balloon that, you know, a different purpose. I mean, you know,
right?
Like they mentioned, it might have came from a car lot.
Oh yeah,
you know, used car lot or something,
or a Buc-ee's. It could have been Bucky Beaver.
Yeah, Buc-ee's. It could have been Buc-ee's, man. Yeah.
We've had some All Things Unexplained trips to Buc-ee's, actually, in Tennessee, and some good times there.
Yeah.
Buc-ee's is amazing. Fantastic. Shout out to Buc-ee's. We're open to sponsorships, by the way. Shout out to Buc-ee's. We've given you a fair amount of business. I'm just going to say that.
Hey, let me say one thing about Buc-ee's. I'm just going to say one thing about Buc-ee's. If nobody knows what it is, the one in Tennessee here that he's talking about, we've stopped several times. It has 150 gas pumps. 150 gas pumps.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah.
People are big fans of Buc-ee's. I mean, truly, they have a following.
Yeah.
A massive following.
Oh yeah.
Again, we're blatantly open to sponsorships, Buc-ee's, if you're out there listening. And you know, Tom, I tell you what. I really appreciate what you're doing with the ham radios and the pico balloons and its benefit to young people and to the STEM, to the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics aspects of it. It's getting young folks and grown-ups alike off their screens and actually involved in something constructive and educational. It has a wonderful purpose and a wonderful mission. It also gets young folks and grown-ups alike interacting with each other and socializing, which these days is just priceless and invaluable. And I hope everybody will check out your podcast and your website, and also check out ham radio and check out pico balloons as a hobby. But I appreciate you, Tom, letting us dig into some of these details with you. And it's because in ufology, there's especially a tendency from the government and from the Pentagon to just deal the public general non-specifics. And at this show, we firmly believe the devil's in the details, right? Like we've had countless guests tell us, it's about the data. We can only move forward in what the truth is of UFOs with valid data. And there's only one way to find that out. And so I really appreciate you letting us dig into these details with you.
Well, you're very welcome, and we enjoyed being with you tonight.
Yeah, we have a few listener questions that I would love to
Okay.
send your way. And this is fun because I think, the idea of building balloons, like you said, with kids and what have you, would be great. So our listener, Jason Stifler, wants to know how difficult it is to build a balloon and how long does it usually take to build?
Okay, well, we actually don't build the balloon itself. We finally found some after years of hunting. I need about 2 hours to explain the balloon, but I'm going to do it here in 30 seconds. I'm going to do it in about 30 seconds. The Mylar, we started flying these Mylar party balloons. Mylar was the best material at the time because it wouldn't stretch. We got to have a balloon that doesn't stretch. You can't use latex. You can't use a balloon, like a party balloon that blows up and stretches, because what happens is as it goes up, the gas expands and the balloon gets bigger. And it goes up and the gas expands, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it pops. That's the way a weather balloon works. And in fact, a weather balloon is made to pop like that. And a weather balloon lasts about 3 hours. The material is made not to stretch. Now, there's a certain amount of PSI. If you go over the PSI, it's going to pop. It's going to explode. And so we know the pressure up there. We know the pressure we've got to get to be safe. We put a very measured amount of lift in the balloon. When a balloon leaves us here on the ground, it is almost empty because it's going to expand as it goes up. So this thing expands. It gets tight. The balloon fills completely out. It gets tight. But it's got to hold. It can't stretch anymore. If it stretches, it's going to go higher. Then if it stretches, then it goes even higher. So the balloon has to stop stretching. So based on the volume of the balloon, the weight of the payload, the amount of gas that the lift that we put in, we can determine how high it will go. As far as the tracker, you can buy. There are several people that are selling these little trackers that you can buy. In roughly the $150 range, and you can attach that there and launch it, and there it goes, and you can track it around the world. Now, we build our own trackers under a microscope. I was going to show you some little parts tonight on the end of the tweezer. It's smaller than a gnat. Some of the parts are really, really small. But we can actually build a tracker that will transmit 9,000 kilometers. That's 6, 7, 8,000 miles. And it's easy to see on our maps. There's a map that shows the tracking. And you can see our balloons. Let's say if it's over the Atlantic Ocean, you can see that it's being picked up in Australia and all over Europe and maybe in Hong Kong and Japan. So you can see all the places in the world that this balloon is actually being picked up. They pick that data up and they put it into the internet, and then it goes to the tracking website and it's plots on the map. So we can get a balloon in the air probably for about $40 or so. And the balloons we're flying today are about $12, and they're the best we have found. And they're staying up a long time. They handle the pressure and they stay up.
Great answer. Tom, it was reported that the spy balloon took a drop of as much as 20,000 feet at one time. Listener George Winters wants to know, do balloons, your pico balloons, typically drop 20,000 feet all at once, or how about any altitude change at all?
Well, our pico balloons, they can, but that means they've got a hole in them. And if they get a leak, they're going to come down. They're going to come down. Some come down a little slow. They leak out over days. Some come down fast. We've lost balloons in the deserts. We've lost them in the oceans. We've lost a lot of balloons in the early days. No, we can't change altitude like that. We don't have anything to maneuver our balloon. It just goes with the wind. Atmospheric pressure will change the altitude of a balloon. It may change it, 500 feet, 700 feet. It may vary up and down, say within 1,000 feet, over time as it goes around the world. The Chinese balloon, my understanding was the Chinese balloon had equipment in it that could actually, I think they had some propellers on it that we could probably even steer the direction. It's simple. It's simple to bring a balloon down 20,000 feet or take it back up. And what they may have inside there, and the government hadn't let me look, but inside the balloon, there could be another bladder or in there where if they just pump regular air into that bladder, the weight of that air will bring the balloon down. And then when they're ready to go back up, they just pump that air back out of that bladder. And, of course, the helium or whatever's in there is going to take the balloon back up. So they have equipment and sophisticated way of increasing or decreasing altitude. We don't. We fly the jet streams, and it goes where the wind blows.
So you might have missed that, but Tom said the government hasn't let me look. And after your stories on your show last night about the SWAT team coming to your house and all of these people reaching out to you for your insight, I'm like, maybe the government would let him look. I can't tell if he's being facetious or not.
The UFO task force is always looking for some new recruits.
Some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
Well, I did have a top secret security clearance when I got out of the Air Force for about a year afterwards, but then, it kind of goes away. So I guess they don't trust me.
Oh, man. Well, we trust you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's dive in, Tim, to a little bit of analysis about what we think happened and why.
Absolutely.
You might have more specific questions.
Well, I tell you one thing I want to know, Tom, because we heard a lot of talk about these UFOs that were shot down, whatever they were shot down because they represented a threat to commercial air traffic. Tom, are you aware of any pilots or passengers on commercial flights that have ever even spotted any of your pico balloons in the air?
No. In fact, I've got a pilot friend just retired 35 years, wide body. He has never seen a balloon in the air. Let me say this about that. On one of the TV networks, I was on Newsmax the other night, and they gave me one question, and it's the most controversial question. It's these things fly at altitudes where civilian aircraft fly. And that's actually the only reason the government gave for shooting it down. These things are a hazard to aviation, so we shot it down. That's the only reason they had, if you remember and think back. But if you really think about this, we're flying under regulations of the Federal Aviation Agency today. The Federal Aviation Agency, they do all kinds of tests. They shoot chickens and birds into jet engines, and they freeze them, and they do this, and they do all this testing, and they have regulations, and we fly under FAA 101 exempt regulations, meaning that we're complying with the FAA. And I think the FAA feels like that there is no danger to civilian aircraft. There are hundreds and hundreds of balloons up there, and typically you don't see them. I mean, I've flown probably for the last 30 years quite often. I've never seen a balloon in the air.
That's a great point.
Think of this. Take a cork and throw it out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and just think, hey, that's a balloon up in the sky. I mean, is the ship going to hit that cork? I don't know. I mean, if it did, it probably wouldn't hurt it,
Right. That's a terrific example. I love that. Tom, do any of the pico balloons have lights on them?
No. We have a very, very small power system up there, solar only. We don't have any power at night. Just solar power only. There is a different balloon that we hams do fly, and that is the big weather balloon. But it has a completely different aspect here. We gas that up. We did one here last year, and we launched it in Tennessee, and it went down in Mississippi. It traveled 67 miles. It was up 3 hours. It went to 108,000 feet. We had cameras on it, everything on it. But again, we tried to file a NOTAM, TAM with the FAA, and they really didn't want it. They said we really didn't need it because, again, we're under the level there that they require. But that was an interesting launch. We launched it. We knew exactly. There's plotting on the internet and programs that tell us that look at the wind speed and direction at different levels of altitude, and we knew exactly where that balloon was going to go. We went down to Mississippi. We beat it down there. We had breakfast, and we were waiting on it to come down, and it came down, and we recovered it. And that was a fun case.
That's a big day.
Oh, that's amazing. What part of Mississippi were you in? Smitty, our co-host, is missing, and I are both from Mississippi.
Well, it's just northern Mississippi up here, the Olive Branch, south of Olive Branch, down that way. But we launched out in Summerville, Tennessee, and the plot I've got a presentation I did. The projected plot and the actual plot were almost exactly on top of each other. So it took it about an hour and a half. It took about an hour and a half to reach 108,000 feet, and it took about an hour and a half to fall after it popped. And that was a lot of fun, but I don't think we want to do another one because we were so lucky. Everything fell together there. We were right under it. We were right under it, waiting on it. If we had made a wrong turn, I think I could have been out there and caught it in my hands when it fell. And but next time we'll lose the 3 GoPros. They'll end up in a tree somewhere out in the swamp, and we will never find it.
Yes.
Right. Now, Tom, that's a good segue. What you mentioned about the technology on the balloons and no lights and such into my next question. So, some of the pilots, it's been recorded, claimed that these objects interfered with their sensors. Do you know or think that your balloons could do that?
No, our balloons didn't. I think that's the 2% I was talking about earlier that probably did it. But
yes, back to aliens.
Will not. Ours, our little transmitters on a specific frequency. It's in a ham radio band, and it runs less power than your garage door opener. I mean, I just can't get into jamming, a jet fighter's system. So I think that probably would take an alien technology to do that.
Right, and and
if it happened, I don't have an answer for it, man.
Yeah.
I just heard somebody chiming in on. We're getting a little too close here.
So some of that, I think, sir, will save for closed session.
Ronald Moultrie from Arrow. So, Tom, I'm interested in what you think about this, and you've kind of alluded to this, but I just want to get your thoughts on this. Pentagon spokesman Brigadier General Patrick Ryder said that the UFO shot down over Alaska posed a reasonable threat to civilian air traffic as it was flying at 40,000 feet.
Yeah.
What do you make of that assessment?
Well, again, as I just mentioned, the FAA says that we're flying within their rules. The FAA is the experts on what is a hazard and which is not a hazard, and which should be allowed and which should not be allowed. So we're following their rules. In fact, hey, if you read the FAA rules, guess what? Unmanned balloon. Let's see. It says, balloons have the right of way over other aircraft. So that's what the rules say. So anyway, no, I think. See, they're in Washington. They're talking about something that they really didn't know about. They're not talking to the FAA about it, and that was, I really think that was the only reason that they could come out with on TV and say why they shut it down. Said we don't know what it was, but it was a hazard to civilian aircraft, so we shut it down. Well, if you shoot everything down as a hazard like that, if that is a hazard, you probably got 1,000 balloons in the sky, you're going to have to shoot down.
So, Tim, did you have more specific questions, or can I dive into an analysis here?
Well, just one more thing before we analyze, CJ. And that was a great answer, Tom. And we really appreciate you coming on the show. We're talking to Tom Medlin with the Amateur Radio Roundtable podcast, balloon expert, pico balloon, and ham radio expert. So I've read that these balloons, fly at such an altitude that basically, at least during the day, the visibility is impeccable because they're often above the clouds. And they said that the Alaskan UFO was shot down during daylight hours and that it was actually easier to spot. I just want to know, what do you make of the possibility that our F-22 pilots laid eyes on this Northern Illinois Bottle Cap Balloon Brigade balloon and determined we've got to blast this thing down?
I don't think the pilot probably made that decision. I think he was told, go up there and shoot it down. Whatever it is, shoot it down. I don't know. I mean, they're still saying they don't know what it was.
Right.
So. Yeah,
right. And you know what? I was speaking to our military expert, Mr. J, this afternoon, and he gave a very similar answer because I posed that question to him. Mr. J, why would our pilots just, take down something that they plainly see as a hobby balloon? And he said, Tim, the way the military works, you just follow your orders, right? If they tell you run full speed ahead into that brick wall, you run full speed ahead into the brick wall and you don't ask questions.
Yeah, I think the fact that we let the spy balloon go all the way across the United States, and they didn't shoot it down until the public started, revolting about our security, and then they felt like they had to do something, so they opened the radar up a little bit and they said, "Oh my goodness, we're being attacked by thousands of people out there, man. We don't know what they are. Shoot it down." So I think they just got a little trigger happy. After that, and they wanted to, I don't think the guy that was flying the F-22 wanted a balloon painted, on the side of his airplane, right below the cockpit. How they put the kills on there. I don't know if he's going to have a balloon on there or not. If maybe the big balloon might show up, but if he puts our little bitty balloon on there, it's going to look bad, man.
Oh,
I tell you what, it was all very H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds like. I mean, for a while there on social media.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some folks taken up in the bunkers. I mean, like unwrapping the MRIs. I mean, you name it. It was had a very War of the Worlds kind of feel to it.
And Tom, you just sort of answered my question a bit there. But so for the sake of this show and tonight, we're going to assume that this was a balloon and that you are not a double agent that was put out into the media to make us all believe it was a balloon while really it was a UFO and you are trying to convince us otherwise. So again, we're going to just assume for this podcast that it was a balloon, given that it was within FAA, regulations, given that it did not pose a threat to our airspace as was claimed. What do you think the reason is that we spent the money that we spent sending this F-22 up there with a missile to shoot down these three UFOs? And do you think that the other two were also balloons?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that we're missing one of those because none of the ham community has said it. They're probably afraid to talk about it, but they probably were some type of balloon. I don't think there were anything hostile or anything like that. So, just your standard Sidewinder is $399,000, and they launched four. They launched four of them to take three out. One of them went in the water up there in Wisconsin, and they missed. So, that's 1.2 million right there. And then your airplanes, they fly in pairs. They run anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000 per hour to fly. And then you've got the tanker that has to go around up there. It probably runs the same thing. So it was quite expensive to shoot down. Probably a $50 total package up there that was sent up by a 12-year-old,
Oh my gosh.
kids up there that were trying to do some STEM projects.
Wow. And again, you just think, all right, they've got the public's attention. Everybody's watching. We were on pins and needles with this Chinese spy balloon. We've opened our radar up more. We're seeing things.
Yep.
Shoot them down. Take them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the government's never going to admit they shot this down because they've said multiple times, we don't know what it was, and until we can find it, we're not going to confirm that. And they've also called off their search, so they're not going to find it.
Yeah. I feel very enlightened.
Yeah, I could send them one if they want to see it, but.
I want to send up one on our podcast. Can we make like a show where we watch you put a balloon together and send it up and track it? Wouldn't that be fun for our viewers to be able to?
Yeah, it's not much. I was prepared if our video worked. I was going to show you one here already put together in my hand, and I was going to show you a balloon back here, but we can do it another time.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a listener question for you, Tom, from Jason Stifler. How often do you launch balloons, and where do you release them from?
Well, not very often. I mean, we used to try to keep one in the air, but as we got better and better, I mean, we really haven't launched a major one in about 252 days now because we're still flying. And we use our call letters. We use our call letters as the ID on the tracker, which reports to the Google Map. And since our call letter is already being used, it's a little difficult to send up another tracker, because we can't, we don't have other call letters. My call is W5KUB, unless we can put someone else's call letters on it, and then we can plot it on a map as a separate balloon. We did launch 2 months ago. We did launch down in the Antarctica. W5KUV did have two balloons launched down in Antarctica for the scientific study, and one of them still flying. One of them, after about 60 days, it crashed down in the ocean.
Shot down by a Sidewinder.
Don't know.
Maybe it was shot down by a UFO.
I imagine it was. I would imagine it is just. It just went down. I mean, these things are very fragile. They're very, very fragile. And if you hold it wrong with your hands, if you put your thumb on one of the solar cells, it'll actually snap. They're really thin glass. They're really thin glass. The antenna on here is just a little piece of wire that hangs down, and that wire is the size of a hair of your on your head. It is so small, and we do that to hold the weight down. So, it's very, very fragile.
So kids of a certain age would not do well with these balloons. 12 seems like the right age to start.
Yeah. Well, they had adult supervision, to do this.
So do my kids, and I assure you, they break everything in sight. Saying adult supervision here might be a stretch, but I try. All right. Well, Tim, any other specific questions that you brought to the show this evening?
No, I think that's it for me and our listeners. And Tom, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show with us tonight.
Yes.
Well, you're very welcome. And maybe all this commotion is going to die off a little bit here. It seems like it is. We'll just have to.
It always does.
We'll just have to see what Congress does here. But we really appreciate you having us on the show tonight and getting our story out and getting what we know out. And guys, I'm no expert here. It's just part of the hobby. I'm pretty astute in this, but I don't consider myself an expert with it.
Well, I think you have a lot more knowledge than the average public does. So we appreciate you sharing that with us. And for those of you that are just now tuning in, please do go check out Tom's podcast. He hosts the Amateur Radio Roundtable, and they do a live video version on Tuesday nights. You can find that at w5kub.com at 8 p.m. Central Time. Tim and I had the pleasure of joining for a little bit last night, and you've got quite the group of characters on your show, and they seem to all have really great knowledge about ham radio and about ballooning, and they were fun to chat with for a little bit there. So thank you for having us, and thank you for joining our show this evening. We would love to hear our listeners' theories on what's going on. Again, it probably will all start to die down and get swept under the rug, but that doesn't mean that there isn't something that we need to be digging into further. So if you have a theory that we didn't discuss tonight, please do send it our way on social media or to our email, and maybe we'll have another show to chat about it. Tom, any links that I have not mentioned that you would like to provide our listeners where they can find you?
Well, we have a Facebook group that has about 14,000 members. It's for ham radio and shortwave listeners and electronic enthusiasts. If you fall into one of those categories, if you're interested in electronics or something, we'll let you join. And that's just the Facebook. It's just W5KUB. It's a Facebook group. Again, our website is w5kub.com. Let me just mention, if you got anybody out there, your preppers and people that have these shortwave radios down in your bunker, we are on shortwave on Thursdays. Our entire 2-hour show is also broadcast out of Monticello, Maine on WBCQ, 7490 kilohertz, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. every Thursday afternoon. You can hear Amateur Radio Roundtable. And we're carried just about on every podcast out there. Just search for Amateur Radio Roundtable, and you'll find our audio-only podcast of the show. And that's about it.
All right. All good things. Well, Tim, thanks for making this all happen for us tonight and making the connection with Tom. And Tom, thanks so much for coming on the show. For those of you that are joining us live tonight, we appreciate you, and we appreciate our listeners wherever you may be listening. Some of you are in South Africa? Is that where we were just ranked super high? South Africa,
And New Zealand.
New Zealand, Ireland, Puerto Rico. We're popular. Look at us.
Antarctica.
Yeah, Antarctica. Yeah. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast, share us with your friends, send your favorite ones to your friends, and follow us on social media. Again, thanks for tuning in. We hope that you will, you'll have to do it, Tim. I can't remember. Where's Smitty?
Well, I'm going to take us out by saying this. I want to remind everybody, hey, a lot of us believe that UFO disclosure is coming. It's on the way. This is just one step in disclosure. This is just one piece of the puzzle, and we can all take part in the solution to the UFO phenomenon. The skies, as we've been told, they're not classified, folks. Get off your screens, look up. You can collect data. We can all collect data. We can analyze it, and then we can get to the truth. And the whole truth is not going to be pico balloons, even though this could have been what happened over Alaska. But that doesn't explain Roswell. It doesn't explain Mr. Billy, our first guest, who had an encounter in the 70s. It doesn't explain UFOs in the Bible. It doesn't explain the recent military encounters over the last decade that have come to light. So keep looking up.
Real quick, Jason, we do have one more listener question. Did you see that pop up there, Tim?
Yep, let's get to that. Tom, are you still with us?
I'm still here.
Jason Stifler wants to know, doesn't the government have access to the ham radios, and would they be able to identify the gadget that you had, but it was a balloon linked to a ham operator? That's a great question.
Well, yeah, of course, we're licensed to operate the radio systems that we fly. The map that plots our balloons is a public map. There's 3 or 4 different public maps that the government, anybody can see if they would just go there, and they would see where all of our balloons are, the altitude, the speed, the course, where they're going. They would see the call letters. They would know, they would know who it belongs to and so forth. So, that's out there. It's just that they don't know it. And just one last comment. I saw some pictures the other day where the Naval Academy has actually been sending up and playing with pico balloons for almost 10 years now. Well, that's the Naval Academy, so, we all just need to talk to each other and not overreact.
Well, that is certainly something that we can all listen to, right? Advice for everyone.
Yeah.
Listen to one another and do not overreact.
That's right. This was a lot of fun, CJ.
Yes.
Tom, thanks for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Stay unexplained, everybody. Good night, CJ.
Good night.
Good night, Mr. Tom. Thanks again.
Good night.
All things unexplained.
What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the
Yes,
Alaska.
we do.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor was revealed to be the chief scientist of the UAP task force with the Pentagon.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
All right. Back live. It's a brief break.
That's right. We're not even going to pull Larry back up again, but I wanted to get a real quick post-analysis of what we learned from Tom Medlin.
Yeah.
And I think we learned a lot. And the main thing I learned is that I think it strains all common sense to believe that our military shot down pico balloons over Alaska, Canada, and Lake Huron.
So you feel like the government's hiding something? That it was much bigger and that it's easier for them to let us all believe that it was balloons?
Yes. I think it's highly unlikely that the pilots did not recognize these are balloons. I think it's highly unlikely that the radar operators did not recognize these are balloons. I think it's highly unlikely that no one in our intelligence community didn't know anything about pico balloons or where they're at, even though we can literally go to w5kub.com ourselves and see where all the pico balloons are, their altitude, where they're at, whose they are. I think Tom Medlin directly contradicted the Pentagon with facts, which is important. He made it very clear, and the FAA has made it very clear, by the way, that these pico balloons do not represent a threat to any aircraft.
Yes, he made that very clear. But he also, I thought, believed that it was a balloon that was shot down. 98%.
98%. So he's saying there's a chance it was alien. So listen, I think one of two things is happening with Alaska. We have to hone in on Alaska. By the way, there are some contradictions here. Like, it was initially reported the Alaska UFO was car-sized.
Right.
And I believe that based on the radar and visual evidence and other things, they would know the size pretty accurately.
You would think.
Well, okay, if it was car-sized, it was not a pico balloon.
Right.
There were reports that it was interfering with their instruments. Not possible from a pico balloon.
Mm-hmm. So you're leaning more, they're covering up something big, and this is a massive conspiracy, and not leaning towards the government spent $1 million to shoot down a child's hobby balloon, and they are embarrassed in trying to cover that up.
You know, I'm torn. I really am, because I think that it's possible that the Northern Illinois Bottle Cap Balloon Brigade released their information, which, by the way, I did not ask Tom about this because I think these poor folks with the NIBBB may just want to stay off the radar. But I tell you, the reason we got in touch with Tom is because it's currently impossible to get in touch with anybody with the NIBBB. Mm-hmm. Their website has been down for days. It remains down. You cannot find a name associated with that organization. You cannot find an address, a phone number, a town they operate out of, you cannot find anything. And that is the main reason why Tom has been getting so much attention.
Right.
I do believe Tom, at first I wondered, does NIBB even exist?
Yeah.
Hey, they make fun of you about conspiracy theories, but they make the conspiracy theories so plausible they websites are down. Okay, well, I didn't make that up, right? Well, Tom knows the folks at NIBBB, okay, so they're real. Apparently, they did put it on their website at some point that, hey, we think it could have been our balloon shot down over Alaska. So I do think that, one, it's possible that the government or the Pentagon saw that and recognized they had an opportunity to, without even acknowledging their group. You notice how it got picked up quickly by the AP and circulated?
Yeah.
Right, how did that happen? How did that happen? Pretty curious, right? I think the Pentagon realized we have an opportunity here. We don't even have to say anything, but the whole world is going to automatically assume it was a pico balloon.
Yes.
And they're just going to quit asking questions. And you know what? That's what happened. But I wanted to keep asking questions, and that's why we had Tom on the show.
Yeah. And so after all of your questions, you've learned about the size of these balloons. They're a non-threat. They couldn't really be picked up on radar because they're clear. And yet we're being told that these balloons were shot down. Okay, you're taking our best military experts. You're taking our best fighter pilots, sending them up. Somebody at some point would have said, this object is not a threat. This object is a balloon. I mean, they need to be trained in that, right? They need to be trained in what is a threat versus what is a weather balloon or what else. I had no idea there were that many weather balloons up there, by the way, but they saw something else and they took it down.
You almost certainly have to believe they are very well trained in that.
Right.
And that's something else I've been thinking about, is that, this was so unprecedented. This was essentially the first time these jets have ever been put into use in a combat situation. This is the first time these jets have ever shot anything down, so far as we know, over American or Canadian airspace. Ever. When the spy balloon, yes, never before has this happened. When the spy balloon was crossing the United States, when it was going over North Carolina, we saw all the activity in the sky, all the jet military activity, right? And I want to bring this up briefly, because last week I sent thoughts and prayers out to the family of the ones involved in the Black Hawk crash in Alabama. And I'm not saying it's connected to the UFOs, but what I am saying is that we elevated the activity of our military, and that anytime you do that, especially things like jets, things in the air, etc., it increases the risk level of those involved, right? So I think we deserve answers, because you know what? We put our military into action.
Right.
And we deserve to know some answers why.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, because part of me thinks that the government just, putting on a show. I felt like the Chinese spy balloon thing turned into a bit of a spectacle. And a little bit of was, look at us, we're going to take you down. You put something over our airspace, we're going to take you down. Oh, just a hobbyist balloon. Whoops, we just wasted $1 million. But now everybody knows we mean business. I think that that's very plausible. But I also do think it's plausible that it's something much bigger that the government is hiding. I don't have an answer. I don't know. I never know.
Right, and we could have
I
been...
don't deserve a podcast. I never
We
have
certainly were flexing. Oh, you deserve it. You know why? Because we're still digging.
To be fair, the name of the show is All Things Unexplained. I never promised to explain anything.
Well, and we're still digging, CJ, and this is the problem with mainstream media. Things get picked up on the AP. Everybody else runs with it. You never see anything deeper, right? Like
right.
we learned a lot of information tonight. We dug into it. all it took was one generic story on the AP for everybody to say, yep, that's it. Pico balloon.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Back to whatever other frivolous things they're paying attention
Yeah.
to now. Right? But we dug into it, and I'm proud of us for doing that because I feel like there's much more to this story. I'm not sure how much further we got into it, but we did learn. I think Avilub would have been proud. We learned specifics. We learned data. We learned
What's his take on
facts.
this? We need to get back on his website where he writes all of his daily articles. He has to have a take. We need to dive into what he thinks. But when you think about, all of the people that we've had on this show, from Cheryl, who saw, what she assumes was missiles outside of her airplane, to these airplanes pilot stories of them spotting things out of their airplanes, to now these things getting shot down out of the sky, to Avilub claiming a UFO came into our solar system back in 2017, plus another object after that. It does feel like something much bigger is going on.
Absolutely. And you know what? They could put all our minds to ease real quick at this because there's a photo and videos of all these UFOs that were shot down. Right? There's radar, there's photos, there's videos, there's audio from the pilots.
Yeah, I guess
They're
must
not gonna
be
let it
because
go.
there was an image that just came out today of the Chinese spy balloon outside of the fighter jets.
Yeah. Well, they had images.
We want answers.
The Alaska
We
UFO
want
was in the daytime.
Yeah.
And it was so high, it was above the clouds. It would have been a perfectly clear HD image, probably.
Yeah.
Why not release it? Why not show us? It's sad our Pentagon, our government, our intelligence community is sadly the least dependable source of information. The most dependable source of information, seriously, is Twitter. Folks like Jeremy Corbell.
Right.
Folks like George Knapp with Coast to Coast AM. And
Folks
the other
like
thing
us.
is, this whole
CJ and Tim
ufology,
Mounts.
it's all such a tangled web, right? And this little piece of the puzzle does nothing to explain the military videos, to explain the Bob Lazar situation with Area 51 and S2, to explain mysterious situations from the 70s like we had Mr. Billy on to talk about, to explain the dramatic UFO encounter over Lake Michigan, which, by the way, thanks Mr. J for bringing that up, is an Unsolved Mysteries episode now. Amazing. There's so many parallels because the local meteorologists literally tracked these UFOs, including altitude and speed, on his radar and matched it up to eyewitness accounts on the ground and to 911 calls going in at the same time. And they learned so much between the ground and the public on the ground, the call centers, the 911, the sheriff's office, and the meteorologists. And just took a little teamwork.
Yep.
Oh, and by the way, those UFOs, we didn't scramble anything after them.
I suppose we'll just have to keep unraveling the unexplained.
That's right. Let me make
That
sure.
should be on like a roll of toilet paper. Unraveling the unexplained. Make that happen.
I like it. We can sell it at Buc-ee's. We're fancy like unexplained toilet paper at Buc-ee's. Well, on that note, on the Bucky Beaver note, what is your final thought, CJ? Because I'm always curious what you think.
Oh, I'm lost.
Bottom
on this one.
bottom line, what do we shoot down? Balloons or a combo? Maybe it was I also believe it could have been a pico balloon shot down over Alaska. I'm dubious. And you know what? By the way, there's no evidence that points to pico balloons over Lake Huron and Canada.
Right.
Matter of fact, over Lake Huron, it was described as octagon shaped.
Yeah, there were different shapes. Yeah, maybe they shot down this balloon in Alaska as a distraction from the other things that they shot down. It's a lot of effort, though.
Right. And it makes no sense that we can go online and see all these balloons and where they're at for ourselves, right? And of course,
Right.
Alaska, maybe not surprisingly, as a hotbed of paranormal activity, and has been for as long as there have been humans there.
Let's
How do
do
you
an
explain
episode
that?
on that. Alaska.
Yes, well, the last time I was on without you and Smitty, somebody brought up the Alaskan Triangle.
Ooh, I don't know what that is.
And it's a good point. Well, I mean, just Alaska is a hotbed of paranormal activity,
Okay.
from missing persons. I think right now there are officially, I can't remember the exact number, but I say 14,000 people missing from Alaska.
Whoa.
Just completely missing, right? And supposed UFO
How many
bases in the mountains.
People even live in Alaska.
Well, that's right. Now, Alaska's a harsh place, of course, and a lot of these folks are very remote and off the grid. And you know what? Things can happen. Nature is unforgiving in the wild, in the Alaskan wilderness, and in the Alaskan Triangle, and so it's not surprising that people do go missing and are never recovered. Heck, we just shot down a UFO and we can't recover it. We've already abandoned the search, and that's for an unidentified flying object.
Right.
So it's not surprising
that
people.
I do call. I mean, there's no way.
Say
it. BS. I call BS on that. On
on
them
that bleep button.
abandoning the search for it if they, there's no way. There's no way that they abandoned the search, because they either A, recovered what they needed and just said that they abandoned the search, or B, know that what they shot down is not worth recovering.
Right, it doesn't make sense.
Don't want to say that.
They would not have shot it down if they knew it was a pico balloon, I don't think. But then again...
so how can they say it's not worth recovering if they don't know what it was?
Yes. It's a total contradiction.
Boom.
None of it makes sense.
No.
Well, I think that's all the...
Okay.
I did like how you pointed out these don't have lights, right? And so a lot of UFO sightings are associated with lights, and so that those remain unexplained. Can't blame those on pico balloons. Heck, I'm not even sure the spy balloon had lights. And I'm going to say no to that. I don't think you put lights on something you want to stay undertaking.
You want to spy with.
It doesn't explain, like weird triangle formations spotted in the sky, like the encounter Mr. J had. So I thought it was an important detail. There's no lights on here. By the way, all the electronics on there are no bigger than a postage stamp.
I know, that's wild.
Is it even possible for a missile to shoot down something like that?
Yeah, I think it probably is. When you think that these missiles are like designed to target human beings in buildings from thousands of miles away.
No,
I could be
get
wrong
that.
about the type of missile,
But I clearly don't understand how a missile works, because in my mind a missile makes some sort of physical impact with something and blows up because it hit the target, right? But could it really hit a stamp suspended on a balloon at 50,000 feet, and that triggered such an impact that it blew up? Or does it just blow up because it's in the proximity? I don't know. Maybe somebody can chime in on that, one of our listeners who might know.
Yes, we need some missile experts.
Well, with that, that's all the analysis I've got.
Yes, same.
All right. Well, I appreciate you. Appreciate all our listeners. I think we learned a lot tonight.
We did.
Until next time.
Bye. Stay unexplained.
Keep looking up, folks.